On this Tuesday night, the potential cost of COVID-19. New action to stop the virus from infecting the economy and from spreading to more people.
It's not just our usual influenza season.
Plus, keeping it clean. Your best defense to stay healthy. Released on bail, new details on those Canadians detained in Ethiopia. The Democratic presidential race becomes a race to stop Bernie Sanders.
I don't think we should have a socialist heading up our ticket.
More contenders back out to back Joe Biden on this Super Tuesday. And an appalling trend, the recent rise of racism against Indigenous Canadians.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with the fast evolving developments of the COVID-19 outbreak. Action is now being taken to try to limit the impact on the global economy. The U.S. central bank slashed its benchmark interest rate by 0.5 percentage point today, the biggest one-time rate cut since the 2008 financial crisis. That didn't do anything to calm the markets, though. The Dow Jones closed down almost 800 points, and there's a new warning the virus could cut global economic growth in half. Today, finance ministers and central bankers from the world's advanced economies, including Canada, held an emergency conference call to coordinate a response. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is reassuring Canadians.
We recognize the very real economic impacts of the coronavirus globally. We also recognize that there will be impacts on Canadian businesses, on Canadian entrepreneurs, and we will always look for ways to minimize that impact and perhaps give help where help is needed.
There are 6 new confirmed cases in Canada today. The total is now 33. All of them are in Ontario and BC, except for one in Quebec, and all are connected to travel from other countries. The global number of confirmed cases has now surpassed 92,000. More than 3,100 people have died. The World Health Organization says that puts the world in uncharted territory. It says the mortality rate from this virus appears to be more than 3%, and that's much higher than seasonal flu, which kills far fewer than 1% of people affected. In tonight's top story, Mike Le Couteur looks at preparations underway here in Canada for a potential spread.
It's the next stage in the fight against COVID-19. Toronto area transit agencies have started disinfecting buses and trains daily to stop any spread of the novel coronavirus.
We piloted a special long-acting antimicrobial agent on a train. It was quite successful.
It's an additional measure at a time when the federal health minister continues to say the current response is working.
Federal government works very closely with provincial and territorial partners on all kinds of different technical governing bodies that help make sure that our systems are ready should we see an outbreak in any community.
They say they're ready, but they've yet to lay out a battle plan for a possible outbreak in the way other countries have. So, what's Canada's plan?
The basic plan that I understand is the pandemic influenza plan that will be adapted nationwide to deal with this.
Dr. St. John helped to develop the influenza plan after the SARS outbreak in 2003. He says it's not time to implement it, but it is time to explain it to Canadians.
I think it would give people a sense that number one, there is a plan. Number two, it is a multiple component plan. It deals with the private sector. It deals with security sectors like police, fire, ambulance.
He says public health officials are trying to strike the delicate balance between informing the public and causing panic. So far, all of Canada's COVID-19 cases are travel-related, not spread within communities. And that's why some don't think the federal or provincial governments need to take possible next steps.
Each province has health protection legislation that enables medical officers of health to put a person into quarantine if they suspect that they may be developing a disease.
It's an extreme power that could be used to fight a virus which is spreading extremely quickly. Mike Le Couteur, Global News, Ottawa.
Across the border from British Columbia, authorities are scrambling to get a grip on a fast-moving outbreak in Washington state. As of tonight, that state has confirmed 27 cases and 9 deaths. It's the worst outbreak in the U.S., and many of the cases are linked to a nursing home near Seattle. Of the 3 new deaths confirmed today, authorities say 2 were residents at that home. One of them, a man in his 50s, was in the hospital when he died nearly a week ago. Healthcare workers were apparently unaware he had COVID-19, and authorities are now investigating whether any of them were exposed. The UK, which has 51 confirmed cases now, is making clear it expects the outbreak to get significantly worse. And today, the British Prime Minister released a battle plan, including sweeping powers to deal with an emergency. While the vast majority of people who become ill will get better, the UK expects the health system to be stretched, and up to 1/5 of employees could be off work at the same time. Crystal Goomansingh is in London tonight. Crystal?
Donna, this is it. 28 pages detailing how the UK government will protect people from the new coronavirus if the situation escalates. It outlines everything from how many people could be infected to how the military will be used to support local authorities. Battle plans in hand, the British Prime Minister unveiled what people in the UK could face during the ongoing epidemic.
And the plan has 4 strands: containing the virus, delaying its spread, researching its origins and cure, and finally, mitigating the impact.
The urgency to deliver something tangible in the fight against COVID-19 ramped up following the first death of a British citizen last week. He had been on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, and now everyone is being urged to think about how they will cope if 1 in 5 people develops the disease, a worst-case scenario.
I get the feeling, I think, the virus is everywhere, to be honest, and I think it's just affecting different people in different ways.
Haslemere, southwest of London, is just one community where a person tested positive. A pub had to be closed and disinfected. Health officials are wondering how care will be provided to dozens of critically ill people. COVID-19 can cause serious lung issues, and the World Health Organization warns even advanced healthcare systems may be taxed.
It will be very important for everybody to think not only what we can do to prevent the spread of the virus individually, but also what we can do to avoid too much pressure on the NHS.
Right across the UK, people are being told if they think they're infected to call the National Health Service helpline, or if they're here in London, to visit one of the drive-through test locations. The government has outlined an action plan that will be put in place with more details to come if this virus outbreak escalates. Donna?
Crystal Goomansingh in London, thanks. In Japan, where nearly 300 cases of the virus have been confirmed, the possibility was raised today about postponing the Olympic Summer Games in Tokyo. Japan's Olympic minister suggested the Games could be postponed until the end of the year. The IOC, though, says it is committed to kicking them off as planned on July 24th, and that athletes should keep training. In Iran, the virus has hit upper levels of government hard. It appears the entire leadership of that country may have been exposed. The outbreak in Iran is the deadliest outside China. More than 23,000 cases have been confirmed there. 77 people have died. And 23 MPs, about 8% of parliament, are now said to be infected. 2 high-ranking officials, including a top advisor to the supreme leader, have died. Ayatollah Khamenei appeared in public today wearing disposable gloves, and he hit back at allegations Iran has downplayed the outbreak. It's been handled with honesty and transparency, he says, and though the severity of it shouldn't be overblown, he did give the go-ahead to mobilize 300,000 soldiers and volunteers. The best way to protect yourself is the simplest way. Wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water. That hasn't stopped people from snapping up hand sanitizer, though it's becoming hard to find. We'll have more on that a little bit later. Right now, we have a developing news story out of Ethiopia where a group of Canadians were detained last week. They've now been granted bail. They are volunteers with an Alberta-based charity called Canadian Humanitarian. Liam Nixon from Global Lethbridge broke this story and joins me now. Liam?
Donna, Canadian Humanitarian confirms bail has been posted for the 10 volunteers and 3 staff charged with practicing medicine without permission and dispensing expired medication. The NGO is hopeful the group will be released tomorrow. However, it's still unknown when they'll actually be allowed to return to Canada. In a statement issued to Global News, James Murphy, whose brother-in-law is detained, says, quote, "This has been deeply distressing for all of us, and we are focusing all of our efforts on getting our loved ones back to Canada safely and quickly." NDP international development critic Heather McPherson traveled to Ethiopia with the NGO in 2012. She confirms founders Dr. Richard Northcott and Deborah Northcott are among the detainees, along with others from Alberta and BC. She says Deborah was the team leader of her 2012 trip and is a close personal friend.
She is an incredible woman, very caring, very genuine, very interested in the well-being of people around the world.
Canadian Humanitarian spokesperson Justin Steed says an NGO representative and consular officers have been allowed access to the prison and can confirm the detainees are being treated fairly and humanely, but Ethiopian authorities are suggesting they won't be allowed to leave the country until the investigation is complete. Donna?
All right, Liam Nixon in Lethbridge, Alberta, thank you. Canadians are among those hunkered down as a powerful tornado ripped across Tennessee early this morning. At least 25 people are dead and the damage is extensive. A state of emergency is in effect. In the heart of Nashville, a fierce storm front shredded buildings, tore off roofs, and buried people in piles of debris. Schools are closed. Tens of thousands of people are without power. The storm hit fast and it left a trail of destruction 16 kilometers long. Canadian country music star Brett Kissel lives in the Nashville area, and he said it looks like a war zone.
All of the giant green signs were down. There was no lights anywhere. The power was out in that whole region. It was crazy to see a bunch of semis were actually upside down.
Search teams are going door to door looking for those who are still missing. President Trump extended his condolences to those affected and will visit the area Friday. We have some breaking news from the United States. Polls are closing on this Super Tuesday, the biggest election day on the Democratic primary calendar. It will further narrow the field of candidates likely to take on President Trump. And right now, Joe Biden seems to be the one with momentum. The goal is to win the most delegates. More than a third are up for grabs in 14 states and 1 U.S. territory. California and Texas are the day's biggest prizes. In total, 1,357 delegates will be awarded, a huge chunk of the nearly 4,000 at stake. The results on Super Tuesday don't decide everything, but historically it has been tough for a candidate to recover from a poor performance now. Abigail Bimman is watching the results come in.
I voted for Bernie.
Bernie Sanders heads into Super Tuesday in the lead.
We voted for Vice President Biden.
But it's Joe Biden who got a remarkable boost on Super Tuesday Eve.
Let's take back this country.
With endorsements from 3 former rivals.
I'm delighted to endorse and support Joe Biden for president.
While I'm ending my campaign, I can't think of a better way to end it than joining Vice President Biden.
Did Joe Biden promise you anything?
No, not at all.
Amy Klobuchar wouldn't say whether she's interested in the vice presidential ticket. In Virginia, voters we spoke to hope she and Pete Buttigieg are rewarded somehow.
I think they're great candidates, and it'll be a shame if we were to lose them completely.
I thought they were
Class
act, and we hope that they get a position in the new cabinet.
We know that Democratic leaders are trying to make the case against Sanders, and the other candidates seem to be rallying to Joe Biden as the person who can prevent Sanders from getting the nomination.
It's not just the corporate establishment that's getting nervous. The political establishment is getting nervous.
Are you worried about Sanders?
I am indeed. I think he's just going to divide the country, and I think he would have a hard time beating Trump in this environment.
I'm here today because I believe in you.
Meanwhile, Elizabeth Warren pushes to win in her home state of Massachusetts, where it's a fight with Sanders. And then a wild card. Former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg is on the ballot for the first time. He's already spent more than $500 million on ads. Dual Canadian-American citizen Ajay Bhattacharya voted for him Tuesday.
I think the balance of politics, he's not too extreme on either end, and I think he's going to be good for the country. He knows how to run a company, and he knows, I think he'll do well in terms of running the country as well.
And Donna, as you mentioned, we are getting some early results from states where polls have closed. Some of those states, it's too early to call a winner, but important to note that Joe Biden is showing some strength in the South. He's projected to win in Alabama, in North Carolina, in Virginia as well. And no surprise that Bernie Sanders is projected to win in his home state of Vermont. But it could be a while before we have the full results from today's picture. The biggest state, California, 450 delegates. It could take days before we find out what happened there.
Donna?
All right, Abigail Bimman, thanks. An explosive situation in Indonesia coming up, the volcano triggering warnings on a densely populated island. Plus, stupid human trick, a stunt that failed to impress the police. Indonesia's Mount Merapi has erupted on Java Island, the most populated island in the world. It shot a 6-kilometer-high column of smoke and ash into the sky. This is the most active of 500 Indonesian volcanoes. The dust and ash forced the closure of a busy nearby airport. People are being warned to stay 3 kilometers away from the crater and that rains could carry lava to nearby communities. There's a big breakthrough in Australia. For the first time in nearly 8 months, there are no active bushfires in the state of New South Wales. It has been overwhelmed by wildfires since last July. The Rural Fire Service tweeted today that's more than 240 days of fire activity for the state. Record-breaking temperatures and months of severe drought fueled the fires across Australia. At least 30 people died, including a number of firefighters. More than 3,000 homes were destroyed, and more than 11 million hectares of brush and forest was burned, and an estimated 1 billion animals were lost. Recent cooler weather and rain helped crews get those fires under control, but residents are being warned hot, dry weather could drive up the danger again. Ahead, store shelves are short on hand sanitizers. Could a homemade recipe beat COVID-19? Okay, so this is not a stunt. Obviously, anyone should try, and it's landed a Nova Scotia driver in hot water. The man behind the wheel turned himself into the police today. He's facing mischief and other charges. The 39-year-old did get out of that sinking vehicle safely, to the cheers of onlookers, but Mounties certainly weren't impressed. They say the stunt tied up RCMP resources, including a dive team who put their own lives at risk to make sure no one else was in the water. The risk we all keep hearing about right now is from the coronavirus, and the best way to protect yourself, we're told, is to wash your hands and not touch your face. But if you're not near a sink, hand sanitizer will do. And it seems people are paying attention. Stores are running out. As Ross Lord reports, people are even trying to make their own at home.
In Halifax, the squeeze is on. More people are using disinfectants to keep the new coronavirus at bay. As a result, drugstore shelves are either low on supplies or completely sold out. New mother Teresa Bombardier is adding a layer of protection against COVID-19.
So I just walked out of there and I bought wet ones, the wipes, the antibacterial wipes for your hands. He's 1.5 years almost, and I'm, you want to be extra careful with little ones and people with compromised immune systems.
Stores that do have hand sanitizer in stock are running out fast. At this store, there were 200 containers to start the day. By noon, all but a handful were sold.
Yep, I did buy more. Went and got a big thing at Costco of the Lysol wipes.
With liquid disinfectants becoming scarce, homemade solutions are being promoted online, like this one mixing an alcohol compound with aloe vera.
This has turned into a gel-like substance.
Disinfection control manager in Nova Scotia is confident mainstream sanitizers will kill the new strain of coronavirus, but she's reluctant to endorse do-it-yourself methods.
As long as it has that higher alcohol content, it's fine, but I'm not an expert or know about these home remedies. It's not something we certainly do in healthcare.
If sanitizers aren't available, good old soap and water provides protection too.
You try to get up to 20 seconds. We tell you sing happy birthday to yourself. That's one good tip.
There are other new tips with each passing day, including the NBA discouraging players from high-fiving with fans. But officials in Canada continue to preach good overall hygiene and common sense as the best solution. Ross Lord, Global News, Halifax.
Up next, the racist reactions to the rail blockades and who is hurting the most.
Concern for me.
All the attention that's been paid to the hereditary chiefs in northern BC and the rail blockades that have happened in support of them has elevated the discussion about Indigenous rights and title. Many people think it's about time. It has raised awareness, but it's also led to a backlash. Tonight, Heather Yorick's West looks at the surge in racism Indigenous Canadians are enduring.
Some of my earliest memories leaving the reserve has been are to do with racism and being treated differently.
Gabrielle Lindstrom says every Indigenous Canadian has come to experience racism many times in their lives. But the last few weeks have been particularly difficult, as the recent protests give those with racist beliefs a feeling of justification.
Sort of adds fuel to a fire that's been burning for hundreds of years.
On Friday, the tension came to a head in this central Alberta town. The high school was locked down after videos containing racial slurs began circulating online. Those monitoring social media channels say online racism towards Indigenous people has become rampant.
A lot of comments were like inciting violence. People had open profiles. They didn't seem to be worried about sort of like, what they were saying and who was looking at it. It was pretty awful.
On globalnews.ca and its Facebook pages, social media journalists have had to delete hundreds of racist comments since the blockades began. Canada's anti-hate network, which monitors the activity of far-right and extremist groups, has also seen an increase in posts targeting Indigenous activists.
It's a lot on Facebook, a lot on Twitter. It's been escalating since it began.
But it's not just online. This Indigenous hockey player says she was called a racial slur during a recent game in Calgary. For Gabrielle Lindstrom, it's a reminder that even in a time of reconciliation, racist views against Indigenous Canadians are still widely held. And it hurts.
It's the lack of action on the part of society to speak up against what is essentially violence, to speak up against it. And I think that's what hurts the most, is it's just people watching.
Heather Urix, West Global News, Calgary.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Jasper, Alberta. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to us. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.